Elena Rose, a resilient and determined soul, had her early years shaped by adversity in a cold and forsaken orphanage in the industrial city of Michigan. The daughter of a mother who left her early and an alcoholic father who abandoned her, Elena was a little flower that grew amidst the cracks of concrete. During her childhood, she found refuge in imaginary worlds woven by the words of worn-out and forgotten books. The yellowed pages and faded ink became her confidants as she daydreamed of a future that transcended the gray walls of her existence. Elena longed to become a teacher, a guiding light for children who, like her, lived in the shadows of society, providing them with the knowledge and hope bestowed upon her by books. In contrast, Jeremy Montgomery was born under the auspices of a rich and prestigious lineage in Boston. A young man with sharp eyes and a wolfish smile, Jeremy was the epitome of privilege and ambition. He carried the weight of expectation, destined to inherit his family's business empire, a legacy spanning generations. When Elena and Jeremy's paths crossed in the stone corridors of Harvard, it was as if two distinct universes had collided. She, the daughter of forsakenness, marked by determination and struggle; he, the son of privilege, marked by ambition and power. Their encounter was a clash of realities, a dance of stars from two different galaxies, which, against all odds, found themselves at a single point in space and time. Elena was a figure of simplicity, yet possessed a radiance that emanated from her like a beacon in the dark. She carried in her heart grand dreams of transforming the world, not through weapons or money, but through the most powerful weapon of all, education. Educating a child is like throwing a stone into a pond, Elena told Jeremy once, her eyes gleaming with conviction. The ripples it creates may not be immediately visible, but they extend to the farthest shores. Education is that stone, Jeremy. And every child we teach, every life we touch, is a new pond for our stones. Jeremy, in turn, found himself unexpectedly captivated by this woman whose passion and resilience were like a magnet. He was a man accustomed to the glitter of power and wealth, but there was something about Elena, something authentic and pure, that drew him to her like a moth to a flame. At first, Elena treated Jeremy with caution. She saw the difference between them, like a stream separating two fields. But over time, she couldn't resist his captivating charm and the sincerity he displayed, something unexpected from a man of his position. "You see the world in a way I never imagined, Elena," Jeremy admitted one night, looking at her with genuine admiration. "I've always seen life as a series of negotiations and deals, but you see life as a classroom, full of possibilities and potential. That's something extraordinary." And so, against all odds, a dreamy young woman from Michigan and a powerful heir from Boston found each other, united by the undeniable force of attraction and mutual admiration. Jeremy's family faced the marriage with severe hostility, claiming that Elena was not up to their distinguished lineage. "She's not one of ours, Jeremy," his mother, the matriarch Montgomery, warned, with her stern expression and cold eyes. "She never will be." But Jeremy, drawn to Elena's indomitable spirit, chose love over family approval. "She may not be one of yours, mother," he replied, his gaze as resolute as hers. "But she's mine. And I'm hers. And that's enough for me." Thus, defying the opinion of Boston's social elite, Jeremy and Elena united in matrimony in an intimate and cozy ceremony, held shortly after graduation. It was a simple event, yet filled with love and promises of a future together. Determined to start a new life away from the restrictions and expectations of their families, the young couple moved to picturesque Oregon. Elena, with the sparkle of her passion still intact, landed a job as a teacher at a local school. She approached each day as an opportunity to shape young minds and nurture bright futures. Jeremy, on the other hand, began building his own business empire, a company that reflected his values and ideals, not those of the Montgomery family. "I don't want to build something based on status or power," he told Elena one night under Oregon's starry sky. I want to build something that brings value, that makes a difference. Just like you do every day, Elena. And so, they forged a new path together, away from the shadows of their families and close to the promises of the future they chose to embrace. Over the years, Jeremy managed to establish his own business, a flourishing venture that catapulted the family into a comfortable and prosperous lifestyle. Lavish dinners and exotic trips became a constant, and life seemed like a golden dream. Elena, on the other hand, continued to enjoy her role as a teacher, but as the family grew in wealth, she made the decision to devote herself fully to the family they both longed to expand. Jeremy, she said to him one night, with a cup of tea in her hands, gazing at the crackling fire in the fireplace. I love teaching, you know that. But I feel our family needs me now. And I want to be here, for you and for our future children. Jeremy, looking at her with deep affection in his eyes, simply smiled and squeezed her hand. I love you, Elena. And I support your decision, whatever it may be. We'll get through all of this together. 5 years after their idyllic marriage, Elena discovered she was pregnant. It was a moment of pure elation, a cherished dream finally coming true. However, the joy mingled with a shadow of concern when they found out it was a high-risk pregnancy. Elena, however, remained strong. I will protect our child, Jeremy, she said, holding her belly in a maternal gesture. No matter what. I will fight. And so, despite the dangers that awaited her, Elena was determined to face them, armed with the strength of a mother and the love of a united family. In the 8th month of pregnancy, Elena was abruptly taken to the hospital. Shock, fear, and anticipation consumed the couple as the hospital lights became an all-too-familiar backdrop. Their son, a boy they had lovingly named Adam, was born prematurely, tiny but resilient. Elena, however, did not have the same fortunate fate. A severe infection struck her during her stay in the ICU, resulting in an emergency surgery to remove her uterus. The doctors, with somber faces and cautious words, were not optimistic about her condition. Jeremy spent sleepless nights in the hospital chapel, his hands clasped in silent prayer, pleading for a miracle. Please let Elena stay with me, with Adam, he whispered to the silent statues and colorful stained glass. She is our light. We need her. After a month of anguish, Jeremy's prayers were answered. Elena began responding to treatment, and gradually, color returned to her cheeks, brightness to her eyes. Finally, she was discharged from the hospital, bringing joy to Jeremy and relief to the doctors. Back in the comfort of their home, with little Adam in their arms, Elena and Jeremy made a silent promise. They would give Adam all the love and opportunities they could. The pain of losing the dream of a large family still weighed heavy on their hearts, but they found solace and joy in their role as Adam's parents. He is our miracle, Jeremy, Elena murmured one night, cradling Adam in her arms. And we will love him and protect him, no matter what. With all my heart, Elena, Jeremy agreed, kissing Adam's forehead and then that of his beloved wife. With all my heart. The years passed in a blur of laughter, learning, and unconditional love. Adam, a blend of Elena's determination and Jeremy's kindness, blossomed into a sweet and intelligent boy, a source of pride for his parents. However, 12 years after Adam's arrival, an unrelenting economic storm swept through the region. Jeremy's once prosperous company was one of the hardest hit by the storm. The family that once enjoyed a life filled with luxury now found themselves selling possessions and learning to live more modestly. Jeremy's company fought valiantly against the tide of adversity, but ultimately succumbed to the economic crisis, taking with it Jeremy's dreams and hopes. Bankruptcy was a crushing blow to Jeremy, who plunged into an abyss of despair and sadness. I failed you, failed Adam, Jeremy whispered on a dark night to Elena. His voice was choked, his eyes once bright, now dulled by anguish. "Jeremy, don't say that," Elena pleaded, holding his hands. "We still have each other, we have Adam. And that's what matters." However, the shadow of bankruptcy was too heavy a burden for Jeremy. Almost a year after the decline of his empire, the once strong and ambitious man was overcome by anguish. He suffered a stroke, and despite Elena's pleas and Adam's silent prayers, Jeremy passed away. The family that once overflowed with joy and love now found themselves shrouded in sadness and loss, struggling to find the strength to move forward without Jeremy's kind and loving presence. Wrapped in a cloak of mourning, the family that was once filled with laughter and love now found themselves stripped of their patriarch and facing a world that seemed to have lost its shine. Having endured the double blow of bankruptcy and the death of their father, Adam, who was already in the volatile age of 15, transformed from a sweet and gentle boy into a rebellious teenager. Each day, Adam's rebellion grew, manifesting in blatant challenges and cutting words directed at his mother. "You know nothing," Adam shouted once, his eyes gleaming with a rage that seemed strange on the face that Elena had caressed so many times. Elena, in turn, was lost. The son she loved so deeply seemed to be slipping through her fingers, turning into a stranger before her eyes. However, despite the pain Adam's words caused, she remained resilient. "Adam," she said one night, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands. "I understand that you're angry and in pain. So am I. But we need to keep going. Your father would want that." Adam may have turned into a rebellious teenager, but Elena was determined to fight. She had survived the loss of the dream of a large family, the anguish of a high-risk pregnancy, and the death of the love of her life. Now, she was ready to face this new challenge, to bring her son back. With necessity knocking at the door, Elena found herself forced to return to the working world. She resurrected her old passion and returned to the classroom as a teacher. The transition was not easy, especially amidst the chaos her personal life had become. However, the love Elena had for teaching was like a lighthouse in the midst of the storm, a comforting constant in a life filled with changes and uncertainties. "I love being here," she once confessed to a coworker, looking fondly at the empty classroom. "It makes me feel like I'm making a difference, at least for some." However, while Elena found a certain degree of satisfaction in her work, the same could not be said for Adam. The teenager had veered off track, getting lost in a world of bad influences and questionable decision-making. Money started disappearing from the household, taken by hands Elena never thought would steal from her. Harsh words and insults were hurled at her, coming from the mouth of the boy she loved more than life itself. This went on for long and painful 5 years, each one seeming darker than the previous. Several times, Elena found herself in the cold and impersonal environment of the local police station, desperately trying to get her son released after a series of offenses, from street fights to illegal car races. On one occasion, Adam was arrested for shoplifting. It was a harsh blow for Elena, who took on extra jobs to afford a competent lawyer capable of converting Adam's sentence into community service. "I hope this serves as a wake-up call for you, Adam," she told him, exhausted and teary-eyed, after the verdict. "I love you, but I can't keep saving you from yourself." However, the storm hanging over Elena and Adam's lives had not yet unleashed its final gust. One day, Adam, desperate for money to feed his drug addiction and unable to find anything at home, made a terrible decision. He decided to rob the convenience store where he had previously worked, a familiar place he knew would have money. The store was closed, silent, and dark, but that didn't deter him. With a violent blow, he shattered the store's glass, shards flying everywhere. Wasting no time, he shot at the security cameras and quickly made his way to the cash register, grabbing all the money he could. Just as he was leaving, the blaring police sirens filled the air. In a panic, he fired at the officers from inside his car and stepped hard on the accelerator, fleeing the scene with his heart pounding. He managed to elude the police and headed home, thinking he was safe. However, the officers had managed to note down his car's license plate, leading them straight to Elena's house. They arrived, armed and ready, and unceremoniously arrested Adam. Elena, witnessing the scene of her son being arrested once again, felt her heart shatter. He had promised to change, to straighten his life out, but there he was, handcuffed and being taken away by the police. She couldn't understand how everything had gone so wrong. "I believed in you, Adam," she whispered, tears streaming down her face as she watched the patrol car drive away. "I really believed." The family's lawyer, a middle-aged man with a weary expression, met with Elena in a cramped office filled with papers. He took off his glasses, rubbed his eyes, and said with a heavy voice, "Elena, I'm sorry. There's no way we can get Adam out of this one. He's no longer a first-time offender." However, Elena, always astute, noticed a crucial detail: the only identification the police had of Adam was the car. He had worn a hood during the robbery, there were no witnesses, and the security cameras had been destroyed. When she visited Adam in prison, she found a frightened young man, red-eyed from crying and with a desperate expression. Seeing her son in that state, Elena felt a wave of sadness so strong that it became difficult for her to breathe. It was then that Adam, looking directly into his mother's eyes, made an unexpected request. "Mom, I need you to do something for me," he said, his voice trembling. "I need you to take the blame for the crime." He argued that since Elena was an elderly first-time offender, the judge might be more lenient with her. She would likely have to perform community service or receive a minimal prison sentence. On the other hand, Adam would be sentenced to many years in prison. Elena, although initially shocked by the request, found herself moved by her son's plea and decided to take the blame. Adam, relieved, thanked his mother with tears in his eyes. Reluctantly, the lawyer agreed to proceed with the strategy. And despite all of Elena's hopes, she was sentenced to 5 years in prison. Adam promised to visit her frequently and take care of the house while she was incarcerated. As Elena was being taken away to begin serving her sentence, she looked back and saw Adam crying, and she knew he was truly grateful for the sacrifice she had made. At least that's what she thought. Elena was escorted to prison, a cold and desolate place that threatened to swallow her humanity. Nothing could have prepared Elena for the harshness of this new world, the strict routine, the tasteless food, and the overwhelming isolation. However, she clung to hope, as in the first month, Adam visited regularly. She eagerly anticipated these moments, when she could look into her son's eyes and feel a trace of normalcy. But the visits, which started so warm and frequent, grew more spaced out and brief, until a few months later, Adam disappeared completely. Adam's absence weighed on Elena like a wet blanket, making each day in prison colder and lonelier. Her heart yearned for news of her son, but it never came. Loneliness became her only companion. 3 long years passed in that gray limbo. Thanks to her good behavior and the dedication of her lawyer, who tirelessly fought on her behalf, Elena was granted parole. On the day she walked out of prison, Elena's heart pulsed with a mixture of anxiety and hope. She constantly looked toward the door, hoping to see Adam's familiar figure appear to take her home. But to her sadness, that moment never arrived. The freedom Elena longed for had a bitter taste, as she realized she would have to face it alone. With a sense of desolation, Elena boarded a bus that would take her to what she believed was still her home. The journey, one she had made countless times before, felt strangely unfamiliar and familiar at the same time. When she finally arrived, she found herself facing a house that seemed to have been emptied of all the memories she held. Upon knocking on the door, she was greeted by a stern-looking man in his 30s, who introduced himself as Stefan. A wave of discomfort washed over her as he stared at her with suspicious eyes. Elena introduced herself, stating that she was the owner of the house, but she was met with a hostile gaze. "I am the owner of this house," Stefan said in a tone that brooked no argument. However, Elena insisted, explaining that there must be some mistake because her son, Adam, resided in that house. Stefan then revealed that Adam had sold the house to him. The revelation hit Elena like a punch to the stomach. She could barely believe what she was hearing. Gathering her strength, Elena opened up to Stefan, describing the sorrowful saga she had lived through. The story of her sacrificial journey softened Stefan's previously hostile countenance. Moved, he decided to share with Elena the address that Adam had given him after selling the house. After taking another bus, Elena arrived at a worn-down complex where each apartment seemed like a bleak reminder of the American dream. She made her way to the address provided by Stefan and, with her heart pounding, knocked on the door. After what felt like an eternity, the door opened, revealing Adam. He looked visibly worn, his face marked by the harsh life he had been leading, and he had a clear smell of alcohol on his breath. The gaze he cast upon his mother was vacant and distant, almost as if he didn't recognize her. "Why did you sell the house, Adam?" Elena asked, trying to remain calm. Her voice trembled slightly, uncertainty visible in her eyes. "You left me with nothing, mother," he replied with a tone of contempt. "I had to fend for myself." Elena felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. "I need a place to stay, Adam," she said, pleading. Adam, however, rejected his mother with a coldness that shocked her. "You have to figure it out on your own, mother. I am married now. Neither me nor my wife want you here." The disdain in Adam's words felt like a punch to Elena's stomach. The mother who had sacrificed her freedom to save her son was now being rejected by him. She felt betrayed, devastated, and more alone than ever. How could Adam, the boy she had given everything to protect, treat her with such indifference? The pain and rejection Elena felt were suffocating, but she forced herself to take action. Back in her old neighborhood, she boarded the bus and knocked on the door of the house next door, where her longtime friend, Mrs. Sullivan, lived. She called out repeatedly, but there was no response. Suddenly, the door of her former neighboring house opened, and Stefan appeared. He had a compassionate expression upon seeing Elena in her despair. "Mrs. Sullivan doesn't live here anymore," he said gently. "She passed away 5 months ago. Her children sold the house." The blow was devastating. Her friend, her last resort, was gone. Elena sat on the curb, sorrow engulfing her, as daylight began to give way to twilight. Tears flowed freely as she faced the harsh reality of her situation. After a while, Stefan reappeared. He watched her for a moment before asking carefully, "Do you have anywhere to stay?" Elena shook her head, unable to form words. He hesitated for a moment, and then offered, "You can spend the night at my house if you'd like." Elena looked at him, surprised. "Won't your wife and children mind?" she asked. Stefan smiled sadly. "I'm divorced, Elena. And I don't have children. You're welcome." During dinner that night, Elena and Stefan exchanged stories of their lives. Elena shared her tumultuous journey, from Jeremy's death to the sacrifice she made for Adam. She spoke with deep sadness, but also with a strength that Stefan couldn't help but admire. Stefan, in turn, told the story of his failed marriage. He spoke of how he loved his wife and how her betrayal with his best friend had broken him. He described how they planned to deceive him, which led him to flee and start a new life in another state. He told Elena about his mechanic workshop, the work he loved and that gave him a sense of purpose. With a tinge of sadness, he shared that he lost his parents at a young age. As the days went by, Elena found a place in Stefan's life. She took on household chores, cooking and taking care of the house, filling the empty space with warmth and care. Stefan, in turn, began to take care of Elena, grateful for her presence and the comfort she brought. He grew fond of her, treating her with the respect and affection he would have for his own mother. An unexpected and unlikely new family began to form. On a sunny day, Elena noticed that Stefan didn't return for lunch as usual. Worried, she picked up the phone and called him. He answered almost immediately, explaining that he was swamped with work and would grab something to eat outside. "Not at all, Stefan," Elena quickly responded, "I'll pack a lunch for you." Upon hearing Elena's determined tone, Stefan couldn't do anything but laugh and accept the offer gratefully. When Elena arrived at the workshop, Stefan was in the middle of a negotiation with a man selling him parts. Stefan thanked her for the packed lunch with a smile, but Elena couldn't help but notice something strange in Stefan's interaction with the seller. In the evening, while they were having dinner, Elena decided to share her suspicions. "Stefan," she began, "that man you were negotiating with today. I believe he's a scammer." Stefan laughed, shaking his head in disbelief. "Elena, I appreciate your concern, but it's just business. You don't have to worry." Elena, however, insisted. "It's not just a hunch, Stefan. In prison, I lived with all kinds of people. I learned to spot a malicious person from a mile away." Still, Stefan maintained his confidence. "Elena, I understand, but I know what I'm doing." He offered a reassuring smile, but Elena couldn't fully put her unease to rest. The next day, Elena noticed a somber expression on Stefan's face as he walked through the door. He seemed defeated, a shadow of the vibrant personality she knew. When she asked what had happened, Stefan let out a heavy sigh before responding. "I was deceived, Elena," he confessed, his voice laden with disappointment. "I bought the parts from that man. I paid a high price for them, but what arrived was a pile of junk. Inferior quality parts and a much smaller quantity than what I had purchased." Realizing that Stefan's disappointment extended beyond the financial loss, Elena asked gently, "And what about that man?" "He vanished," Stefan simply replied, bitterness seeping into his words. With a look of understanding, Elena nodded. "I told you, Stefan. That man had ill intentions." "How did you know, Elena?" Stefan asked, genuinely curious. The question hung in the air, tinged with admiration and a touch of perplexity. Elena let out a resigned sigh, her expression softening. "Life in prison was tough, Stefan. It taught me a lot, including how to identify people with ulterior motives. That man, he had the look of someone who wasn't being sincere." Noticing Elena's shrewdness and wisdom, an idea sparked in Stefan's mind. He looked at her, his eyes shining with newfound respect. "Elena," he began, "you have a gift for seeing people as they truly are. I would love for you to work with me. You could handle the paperwork and, most importantly, help interview new employees. I think you could protect us from dishonest individuals." He confessed, with a slightly sheepish smile, "I have a good heart, as you said. And it has cost me dearly a few times. I believe your intuition could save us from further losses." Elena smiled, touched by Stefan's trust. "I would love to, Stefan. I'll do my best to protect you and the workshop." And so, she started working at Stefan's workshop. She managed documents, interviewed potential employees, and brought a warm and nurturing atmosphere to the place. Life alongside Stefan brought her newfound happiness, a sense of purpose and belonging. Elena felt as if life had granted her a second chance to care for a child, and she embraced the opportunity wholeheartedly. One day, Stefan needed to expand the workshop team and decided to hire a new mechanic. He asked Elena to join him in the interview process, relying on her insight to choose the right person. The candidates entered the room one by one. Elena watched them attentively, evaluating their behavior, body language, and responses. She subtly signaled to Stefan those she found lazy, those who seemed untrustworthy, and those she considered good candidates. The process was going well until the last candidate entered the room. The last candidate walked into the room, and Elena felt as if time had frozen. There, before her, was Adam, her son. A wave of shock coursed through her body, and her heart seemed to stop, a lump forming in her throat. However, she quickly gathered her strength and regained control over herself, maintaining an impassive expression. The surprise on her face was replaced by a mask of professionalism. They conducted the interview with an awkward formal distance, as if they were mere strangers and not mother and son. They talked about work experience and technical skills, but not about the pain of the past or the scars they had left. When the interview was over, Adam approached Elena. There was not a trace of affection in his gaze or voice, only a sense of urgency. "I need this job, Mother," he pleaded, his gaze fixed on hers. "I'm struggling to survive." Elena looked at him, feeling a mixture of sadness and hope. With a heavy sigh, she said, "I'll think about it, Adam." She knew she was facing a unique opportunity, the chance to finally rebuild the connection with her son that had been lost for so long. At the break of the next day, Stefan collected the candidates' files, curious to read Elena's evaluations. He flipped through the pages, reading the meticulous and insightful comments Elena had noted about each candidate. After all, she had an innate ability to see beyond appearances and identify people's true intentions. When Stefan finally reached Adam's file, he hesitated for a moment, expecting that Elena, driven by unconditional maternal love, had advocated for her son. However, as he looked at Elena's evaluation, his heart skipped a beat. There, written in red ink and in bold letters that practically jumped off the page, was Elena's evaluation: "Absolutely not this one. He's a drug addict, a criminal, and lazy, and will only cause trouble." Stefan was stunned, Adam's file trembling slightly in his hands. He hadn't expected Elena to be so relentless in her assessment of her own son. Upon returning to the house, Stefan found Elena in the kitchen, preparing dinner as usual. There was a burning question in his mind, and he knew he needed to ask. "Elena," he began, carefully placing Adam's file on the kitchen table, why did you evaluate your son this way?" Elena, who was facing away from Stefan, paused for a moment before continuing to stir the pot on the stove. She knew exactly what he was referring to. With a deep sigh, she finally spoke. "Stefan," she said, her voice low and steady, "I did what I could for Adam. I sacrificed my freedom, my life, hoping to save him. But I realized that there are things that are simply beyond our control. I can no longer save him from himself. He needs to learn from life, just like all of us." Her voice echoed through the silent kitchen, filling the space with a sadness that Stefan felt in his heart. He then understood the pain Elena carried, the difficult decision she had to make in evaluating her own son. And so, Elena decided to give one final lesson to her son, Adam. As the days passed, she continued to care for Stefan in the house, and work at the workshop, always seeking to provide the best judgment and advice to Stefan. The young mechanic became the son Elena had always wanted Adam to be: caring, hardworking, and grateful. Adam, on the other hand, was forced to face the consequences of his actions. Without the opportunity of employment and without his mother's support, he had to navigate life on his own. Adam's fate remained uncertain, but Elena believed that life would lead him down the path he deserved. Elena and Stefan's lives continued with a peaceful and fulfilling routine. Gradually, Elena found the peace she had long sought. Stefan's kindness and understanding showed her that, despite all adversities, life could still be beautiful and rewarding. Over the years, their friendship blossomed into something even deeper. They found in each other's company the love and support they had both longed for. They shared their sorrows, joys, and most importantly, they shared the sense of family they had lost at some point in their lives. In the end, Elena's story is a reminder of the importance of facing life's challenges with courage and determination. Even in the most difficult circumstances, there is always a light at the end of the tunnel. And sometimes, that light can emerge in the most unexpected ways and completely transform our lives. And now, I ask you, if you were in Elena's shoes, how would you act? Would you have the necessary courage to face adversity and make the difficult decisions she made? I'm curious to hear your perspective. Please share your thoughts in the comments section below. Your participation is very important to me, so please don't forget to click the like button if this story touched your heart. And get ready, because the next narrative, which is coming up shortly, promises to be equally engaging and emotional. So, I'll see you in the next video. Until then.